Next to the Capitol Extra, it has been called the $1.8 billion boondoggle. Whether or not the funds that have been set aside are funny money or real money, the Senate has now completed 15 months of a study on this particular issue. And joining us today is the man who's been leading that charge, Berkeley and Charleston County Senator Larry Grooms. Senator Grooms, thanks so much for joining us on this edition of Connect to the Capitol Extra.
Glad to be with you today.
It has been a very interesting set of months for you as you have been diving through trying to determine whether or not the state actually has $1.8 billion on the books, or in reality, what is it that you have actually found now?
Well, we have discovered the $1.8 billion anomaly. It was listed as a fund within our state's Treasury. The new Comptroller General, who took over after the former Comptroller General resigned because of poor bookkeeping, wasn't able to identify the fund. He had some questions of the treasurer about the fund. The treasurer refused to answer those questions satisfactorily. And so my committee picked up on the $1.8 billion. What is it? Does it belong to someone? Where should it be? We had asked these questions and weren't getting too many good answers. So the state hired a forensic accounting firm, Alex Partners. They're nationally known. They have at least 13 former Securities and Exchange Commission investigators on staff, and they dug in through the state's books over the summer and issued their final report this January. And the report's clear. It says that the $1.8 billion in a mysterious fund does not exist. It's not real money. So mistakes that were made in the Treasury in 2016 and 2017 have existed since then. So the books of our state Treasury are off. They are not true and they are not accurate. In order to make the books balance, there's an account that has to be used that pretends that there's $1.8 billion that really doesn't exist.
So in that particular case, when you take a look at that, we know that you had the Treasurer Curtis Loftis come before your committee and members of his staff several different times. But on one particular occasion, he actually told the committee, did he not, that the state had made money off of the investment of those dollars. Is that correct?
Well, last year, under sworn testimony before the subcommittee that I chair, it's a constitutional subcommittee of the Finance Committee. Under sworn testimony, Treasurer Loftis said that the money was real. It's so real, indeed, he's even earned interest off of it. And he compiled the numbers. He said, I've ran the numbers. I've said this and I've said that, but the actual number is $225 million. So the money is so real, I've even earned $225 million off of it. There were some of us that had some doubts whether it actually existed, but he insisted that it was real. And then the Alex Partners report testifies, they did the research and they came to the conclusion that the money does not real. It never existed. And then the treasurer put out a media report and on social media, it says, I've always said the money doesn't exist. Thing is, there's video evidence of him saying that before our committee, and now there's video evidence of him saying just the exact opposite. We've reviewed his testimony, and many times his testimony has been contradictory. We know now definitively, there's no doubt, that errors occurred under his watch in 2016 and 2017. In 2017, he knew he had a $1.8 billion problem, and then it was coded in such a way as it wouldn't be seen in our SCI system. That is the accounting system of the state. So a treasury fund solely in the hands of the treasurer and his personnel made mistakes. But the trouble was they covered them up and tried to hide them. So there was they came to light during the investigation of the $3.5 billion error that our Comptroller General had made.
And that was what led to Richard Ekstrom's resignation from that position when he was the Comptroller General of South Carolina. When you take a look at this and you have the promise of $225 million in interest, did we actually make $225 million in interest somewhere? Because as we took a look at the budget last week, the $14.6 billion budget that the House has finished their work on, and you're getting ready to start working on in the next couple of weeks, $225 million being set aside for major projects is huge. Do we have that money or do we not?
Well, that's the interesting question. When you ask the forensic accounting experts, can you earn interest off of fake money? Can you earn interest off of non-existent money? As some suggested that you could, a common person would think, no, you really can't earn money on something that doesn't exist. So now we have expert testimony that says no money was earned on the make-believe $1.8 billion. So no interest was earned on the $1.8 billion that did not exist.
We've jokingly called it sometimes monopoly money, and I've never known at a time when you could actually earn interest off of monopoly money, even in the game itself. Here's the next question for you, Senator. You have been leading a charge on this for months. You have made several statements to the public. You have made several statements to the press. But today you made a very definitive statement on the Senate floor. What is it that you and the committee have now decided is the direction that needs to be taken in this particular issue?
Well, last year, after the treasurer threatened to expose the state's finances to cyber thieves and had to be stopped by other state officials from doing so, I personally called for his resignation before we had the forensic accounting team in. But now that the forensic accounting team has done their job and made their findings known, the other members of the subcommittee, there's 10 members of our subcommittee, are unanimous in a bipartisan way that Curtis Loftis needs to be removed from office for failure to discharge the duties of his office. There are certain statutory duties, and one would be he has to report to the General Assembly any anomalies within our state's finances. Well, he breached that duty. $1.8 billion in errors in your state treasury books certainly rises to the level of something that should be reported. There are other state statutes that he's violated. Had he had an accurate reporting of the dollars in the state treasury, we wouldn't have this problem. He has a statutory duty to accurately report on what's in trust in our state treasury. His records are not accurate and they are not complete. So based on the various statutes that he has violated, we are recommending that he be removed from office.
Now, we had the governor earlier this week basically kind of pull back on that idea. But now that you've got your report out there, what would be the process for removing him? The last treasurer that we had removed from office was Thomas Ravenel almost 2 decades ago when there was issues that were going on with him. What would be the next steps that would need to be taken in this particular case?
Well, in the 250 years of South Carolina being a state, no constitutional officer has been removed from office. So Treasurer Loftis may be the first. We will draft articles for removal for willful neglect of duty. They will be introduced into the Senate. He will have an opportunity to be on the Senate floor to defend himself, and then at some point over the next few weeks, we will move into a vote. If 2/3 of the members of the Senate vote to remove him from office, the resolution goes to the House of Representatives, where the same thing will occur. So they will have over there whether he should be removed. So 2/3 vote of both bodies for willful neglect of duty would be enough to remove him from office.
Which is different than the federal plan, where it starts in the House and they have they put together their piece and then it goes over to the Senate, but basically acts as the jury. We've got a different system in South Carolina, and so each chamber handles that level of responsibility, correct?
This would be for an offense less than an impeachable offense.
Got it.
An impeachable offense would be a high crime or a misdemeanor. If we had evidence that he had stolen $500 million, then we could be able to move forward with impeachment. But there's no indication monies have been stolen. But the Treasury books are in such a state, if someone had taken $500 million, we wouldn't know.
We didn't know that whether or not we had $1.8 billion. That's part of the problem. So on the Senate floor today, you called for his resignation. What do you think is going to be his response? How do you think this is going to be moving forward?
Well, so far his responses have shifted. First, it was, there's no problem in the Treasury, but then when it came to light, it was. Then he said, well, it's not my problem, it was caused by the new comptroller. So this 10-year problem, he's trying to blame on Comptroller General Gaines, who's been in office now for a little more than a year. So now, when he's presented with more evidence, when the forensic auditing team are saying this is the problem within the Treasury, you've known about it since 2017, you've done nothing about it, now he's casting aspersions upon the subcommittee. He's trying to assign us with some kind of ulterior motives other than trying to get the truth and work for the benefit of the people. So he's trying everything he can to make something up that people might buy, but the people of the state are pretty smart. I think they can see through some of the BS that's now coming from the Treasurer of South Carolina.
One last question for you. This has happened under the watch of Treasurer Loftis. This has been going on in the state, as you said a little while ago, it's been going on in the state for several years now. Are you going to have to take legislative action, or is there going to be something that's going to have to be done in order for the people of South Carolina to know, and the legislative officials, legislators in the House and the Senate, to know that this information that they're getting from the Treasurer is real and accurate? Are you going to have to take any sort of legislative action beyond the potential of removal of him from office?
Well, the laws of our state are pretty specific. The Treasurer is statutorily charged with having accurate records of the Treasury, and we know that has not been the case. So he has failed in that duty. So the laws we have are pretty good, but when they're not followed, what is the remedy? The remedy is what the Constitution charges the General Assembly to do, and that would be to remove a state officer that willfully neglects his duty, which is what Treasurer Loftis has done. There are some more things we can do to ensure more accounting, some more auditing is done correctly. We have the Office of State Auditor. Our state auditor has now resigned over this issue. Comptroller General Richard Ekstrom has resigned also for financial inabilities. And so the state treasurer is the only one left, and he's still hanging in there. But he has our state's treasury books in shambles right now. They are not true and they are not correct. And so having a different auditor in there will help alert us. But when the person that caused the problem is still there, it's really hard to fix the problem.
Senator Larry Grooms, Republican from Berkeley and Charleston counties, thanks so much for being a part of Connect to the Capitol Extra. We look forward to having further conversations with you as this story continues to unfold. Again, thanks so much for being with us.
Appreciate it. Thanks.
We'll have more on Connect to the Capitol Extras as we go throughout the rest of the legislative session. Make sure you catch us at WACH.com.